What's up, y'all? This is Sunny. I'm back with another video. I hope y'all are doing good. I seen a video on JW.org a couple of days ago that was so shocking to me that I had to stop what I was doing, collect my thoughts, and go ahead and start preparing for this video. Now, the title of this video on the site that I saw was "We Can Rejoice Despite Hunger." Now, when I saw that title, I was completely taken aback. And I was just asking myself before I watched it, I said, could they really be going here? Are the Jehovah's Witnesses really going to try to explain to us that we can be rejoiceful and we can be happy even if we're coping with hunger? Because the thing is, we know that the Jehovah's Witnesses is an organization that wants its members to be poor. It wants its members to be poor, desperate, and 100% dependent on that organization. So when I see a talk that's entitled "We Can Rejoice Despite Hunger," that's right in line with these thoughts of how the Jehovah's Witnesses, how the organization wants you to be hungry. It wants you to be content with having nothing, not even food, right? I did a video some time ago that was titled "The Jehovah's Witnesses Wants Its Members to Be Poor and Dependent." In this video that I saw, was right along those same lines. This is something that I feel particularly strongly about, and so when I see it on the site, it just makes me take notice. So I'm actually going to go through that talk with you guys and just pick out some key points, because this mind control that and you're going to see it in the persuasive, charismatic way that this guy presents this material. It's like they're hypnotizing these kids. They're making their minds so that the reality of life in this world and the reality of how you're supposed to comport yourself and the things that you're supposed to find important as a man, as a human being, it's like those things are distorted, all in favor of the organization. So let's go ahead and run this first clip, and I'm going to give you guys my thoughts.
How do you feel when you miss a meal or haven't eaten for some time? For many, it affects their mood, their ability to concentrate, sometimes their ability to even think straight.
And so incidentally, when a speaker starts his talk by asking you a ridiculous question like, how do you feel when you miss a meal? All that's doing is indicating the intelligence level of that he assumes for his membership to start a talk with the question that stupid. Let's keep going.
But what if that hunger was beyond our control, or prolonged to the point where we had no other choice but to be hungry? Well, that was the situation the Apostle Paul found himself in as he engaged in his ministry. For example, at 2 Corinthians 11:27, Paul said that he was in hunger and thirst and frequently without food.
And so do you see what they're doing here? They're already starting with the gaslighting. See, so gaslighting is using psychological manipulation to make a person question their sanity or their reasoning abilities, right? That's gaslighting. Jehovah's Witnesses they're masters at that. See, what he's doing is he's making you feel like if you're hungry and you're not like this Paul that's mentioned in the Bible, you're doing something wrong. See, because Paul, as we're going to see as he goes on with this talk, Paul, this Bible figure, he coped with hunger, right? And he coped with hunger and desperation and all of these problems. And yet he was still able to find joy just by relying on Jehovah. See, that's him laying the groundwork. That's gaslighting, right? Because if you're not like Paul, then you're doing something wrong. Even if you are coping with hunger and all of these desperate circumstances, if you're not rejoicing, if you're not being content with what you already have, then you're doing it wrong if you're not being like Paul. Let's go ahead and continue on with this material and see where this guy goes with it next.
At times, he may have been hungry and thirsty because of being dependent on strangers or on whatever provisions he could obtain through his own labors in unfamiliar surroundings. Paul also lived during the time of a great famine. But despite facing all these times without food, it's interesting to note the attitude of the Apostle Paul. At 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 10, he describes himself and his fellow Christians as sorrowing, but ever rejoicing.
To me, the guy giving this talk, his name is William Turner Jr. To me, this guy is, people like this are the most dangerous types of Jehovah's Witnesses that you could come into contact with, because he's soft-spoken, he comes off as endearing, and he's able to, just by means of his own charisma and speaking ability, it's a way of hypnotizing people. It's a way of lulling individuals into a state where they're more likely to respond to whatever it is that you're saying to them, right? And again, to me, people like this speaker are the absolute worst type of Jehovah's Witnesses that you could ever encounter. There's a word that I'm going to touch on later on as we go. That word is sociopath. And charismatically using psychological manipulation to get people to do whatever it is that you want them to do is one of the signs of a sociopath.
So Paul acknowledged that difficult times could bring a measure of sorrow and distress. But how was he able to rejoice, to have this inner joy despite his hunger? Well, notice his answer. Turn with me in your Bibles, please, to the book of Philippians. And we're going to read Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. Paul says, "Not that I am saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be self-sufficient regardless of my circumstances."
And incidentally, the scripture that this guy is using, it contradicts his argument, because Paul says that he learned how to be self-sufficient, right? And being self-sufficient doesn't involve relying on anybody to help you to satisfy your physical needs. Self-sufficient means self-sufficient. It means you're relying on your own resources to solve your problems, whether this be hunger or whatever the situation might be. But as we see, especially as this talk goes on, we're going to see how, again, how the Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't want you to be self-sufficient. They want you to have nothing and to rely and depend on this organization for everything.
I know how to be low on provisions and how to have an abundance. In everything and in all circumstances, I have learned the secret of both how to be full and how to hunger, both how to have an abundance and how to do without. For all things, I have the strength through the one who gives me power. Did you note in verse 12, Paul speaks of learning the secret of both how to be full and how to hunger. This secret involves relying on Jehovah for life's necessities and being satisfied with whatever he provides.
These words are so dangerous. What this man is saying is so, it's abhorrent to me. It's just so absolutely disgusting to me that I just have to talk about it. He said that the secret of knowing how to be full and how to hunger is relying on Jehovah, relying on their God, and being satisfied with whatever he provides. And that is just so dangerous. I mean, it sounds okay. It sounds good. Yeah. Rely on Jehovah, rely on God, and be satisfied with whatever it is that he provides, right? But as you're going to see towards the end part of this talk, this person is not relying on quote unquote Jehovah. The person is relying on other individuals, other humans to satisfy her physical needs. That's what the person is relying on. To say something like you need to rely on Jehovah and be satisfied with whatever he gives, that's dangerous. That's not life. That's not living, right? Not once in this guy's talk does he even mention the fact of, if you're hungry, if you're starving, if you're miserable, if you're coping with, other problems, if you're coping with homelessness, if you're coping with the lack of a job, you're supposed to do whatever it is. You're not supposed to wait around for Jehovah you're not supposed to just sit, in your parents' house or, sit at the elder's house and just wait for someone to present you with an opportunity to fix your situation. You're supposed to be proactive about going out and trying to better your circumstances. That's living. That's the secret of life. You know, relying on Jehovah. That's just something that people like William Turner Jr. say to control these Jehovah's Witnesses and to maintain power for that governing body. And when I see people like this William Turner Jr. going up on stage and talking like this, it just absolutely sickens me. I can't, it's hard for me to express to you guys just how mad it makes me when I see this guy up here talking like this. You know, the thing that really makes me so mad is that I know that he's sincere, but sincerity is meaningless when it comes from a position of pure insanity, because that's what this is. That's what this man is saying to all of these impressionable Jehovah's Witnesses out that are watching this stuff. To get up there on that platform and to get on this website and tell people that they need to rejoice even if they're hungry and rely on Jehovah to take care of all of their needs and be satisfied with whatever he provides, that's insanity. That's not how you're supposed to go about this thing called life. You're supposed to be doing whatever you can do to provide yourself with a standard of living, a standard of comfort, so that you have food to eat, so that you have a nice place to live, so that you have a nice car to drive, so that you have clean furniture, right? So that you have a life outside of going to these 5 meetings a week and going out and knocking on doors. That's living. If you're a man that's watching this, you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, whatever, you're single, you're trying to find a wife, a girlfriend, what have you, I strongly urge you, do not listen to William Turner Jr. You need to be doing anything and everything that you can do to put yourself in a position so that you and your wife and your kids, if you have kids someday, are not having to cope with hunger, are not having to rely on Jehovah to provide for your needs, right? That's the takeaway from this. What this William Turner Jr. is talking about is pure insanity. You need to be, and think about this too. Do you think that any woman, you want to attract a nice woman to live with? You know, you want to raise a family and all of this. A woman's not going to respect you if you have nothing. A woman is not going to respect you if you have a reputation of having to rely on these other brothers in your congregation to provide for your needs. But let's go ahead and finish this talk out and just really see how this brother emphasizes how this sister who was in need relied on the congregation to satisfy her needs.
We'd like you to watch the following video. And as you do, note which provisions helped our sister to rejoice despite experiencing hunger.
Well, here in Venezuela, long before the crisis, there weren't so many financial problems like we have today. For us, the situation started to get really bad 5 years ago. It was hard to get any food at all, even basic items. There were 2 elders that I can say were checking on me almost daily, always asking how much food I needed. When I prepared it and served it, my main concern was that my children would get enough. I always gave them more food. Even though my youngest boy would ask, "Mommy, is that what you're going to eat?" I would tell him, "Yes, dear, I'm fine with this." Then he would say, "I don't think so." I would think, I can handle this, but the amount that I was eating just wasn't enough for my body. One Sunday morning during the meeting, I wasn't feeling very well, but thanks to Jehovah, my daughter was nearby. When I came to, she said, "Mom, you fainted 3 times. I said, "That can't be." So the brothers immediately took me to the doctor. I was diagnosed as having severe malnutrition. The brothers began a plan of action. They brought food that was already prepared, and in fact, they would sit by me until I finished my food. The elders were always looking after me. That boosted my energy, and definitely, I never lost my joy. And it's all thanks to Jehovah. Thanks to Him, because He is the one who sustains me. He clothes me, He feeds me, and He gives me great friends.
I don't really want to subject you guys to any more of that, but did you notice how many times it was emphasized that this person relied on the organization? She relied on these brothers to provide food for her, to check up on her. And really, those brothers were only doing what they were supposed to do. And that's standard for any religious organization. If you have, or just, that's just being human. You know, if you see somebody who's in need and you're in a situation where you can help, that's what you're supposed to do. And that's good that those brothers did that. It's good that this person was provided with what she needed so that her sons and she herself could survive. But you can't frame it as if, you know, Jehovah God stepped in and motivated those brothers to do that, and so that's evidence of Jehovah providing for these people. You can't frame it like that. Because if God is going to intercede and provide individuals with food and what have you, why doesn't He intercede in really, really big stuff, right? I could run down the list of all of the awful things that happen to Jehovah's Witnesses, whether it's children, whether it's women who are in abusive uh, households, or just what have you. I could talk about those things. I'm not going to. You've heard them all before. Why doesn't God step in and handle those situations? Make life better for people who are going through really intense hardships. Why wouldn't He intercede in those type of situations? But He's going to intercede and make sure that, you know, this sister has something to eat. Those brothers were only doing what they were supposed to do. I was walking home. I live downtown Seattle, and I was walking back to my apartment, and there's a couple outside of the Whole Foods who had nothing. They had no food to eat. They were a young couple too, and they were asking for change. And I told them, well, I don't carry money, but I could buy you guys something to eat. So I went in there and I bought them some groceries and I bought it out and they had something to eat. You know, that's not God. I'm a disfellowship Jehovah's Witness, so that certainly wasn't God interceding uh, on their behalf. That God motivated me to go in there and buy them guys some hot pizza and popcorn and soda and water so that they had something to eat. No, I wanted to do it because that's just being human. You know, you do things like that. Everybody does stuff like that. You know, that's just being generous. That's just what we do as human beings, right? But the way that the Jehovah's Witnesses frame it, they use situations like the one that this woman was in as emotional manipulation in order to make the point that they're trying to make. That's all this propaganda video was, and you could hear it in the music that they use. You can use it in the way that they framed the shots. You know, it was all emotional manipulation to make people who are watching this stuff believe that, hey, maybe God did intercede in this person's behalf so that she would have something to eat. No, those guys are only doing what they were supposed to do, and it's good that they did that. But you can't use this person's situation as evidence that God is going to step in and intercede and make sure that you've got something to eat. And I want to emphasize again, don't listen to this stuff. Don't listen to William Turner Jr. tell you that you need to rely on Jehovah to satisfy your needs rather than going out and doing for yourself so that you can provide for yourself and your family. You should not listen to people like William Turner Jr. when they tell you that you can rejoice even when hungry. It boggles my mind that that guy could get up there on that stage and be talking like this, and that people can actually, they go along with this stuff. They believe this stuff. They believe that it's okay for somebody to tell you that you can rejoice even if you're coping with hunger. If you're hungry, if you're starving, you have nothing to rejoice about. You should not be waiting on Jehovah to improve your situation for you. What you need to be doing is anything that you can do to provide for yourself and for your family so that you never have to be in a situation where you're hungry, so that you never have to be in a situation where you're reliant on other people to satisfy your needs. But this is what the Jehovah's Witnesses want for you. It's been proven time and time again. This organization They want you to have nothing. They want you to be poor. They want you to be reliant on that organization for everything. This is why at those baptism talks, they discourage you from taking jobs that are going to interfere with your meetings. This is why they do demonstrations where people take menial jobs over people get opportunities to do jobs where they can make a lot of money, but instead they brag about how they took a menial job because it allowed for them to serve Jehovah, which really means serving this organization and serving that governing body. I'm going to say it again, and I'll never stop saying it. The Jehovah's Witnesses organization wants you to be poor. They want you to have nothing. They want you to rejoice even if you're coping with hunger. It makes absolutely no sense. And once again, I urge you guys, do not listen to this stuff. I'm going to close out this video now. You guys take it easy. Have a great one. And I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.